this one's going to linger. Get comfortable. Let the cold fade away. Slow down. Breathe it in. And when you're ready, baby, dream of a new life.
Cabin Life, Borrowed Heat by Catherine Serafina. Chapter 10, Salt and Cinnamon, Part 2. They returned on the third afternoon. I saw them first through the window. Two shapes moving through the trees, slower than when they'd left, but steady. Shane was already at the door before I said anything. When they stepped inside, the cold came with them in a rush of white breath and snow. "You're late," Shane said, though there was no edge to it. "Weather slowed us," Kyle replied, already loosening his pack straps. "Nothing dramatic?" Davis looked tired. Not injured, not shaken, just worn in a way that felt deeper than the walk. I moved closer without thinking. "You okay?" He nodded once. "Yeah." Kyle straightened and adjusted his gloves. "I should head back. Laurel will be waiting." "You don't want to warm up first?" Shane offered. "Eat something?" Kyle shook his head. "I'll eat at home. They'll want to hear how it went." There was something gentle in that. He clapped Davis once on the shoulder. "You're good from here." "Yeah," Davis said quietly. Kyle nodded to us both, then stepped back out into the cold without ceremony. The cabin felt smaller once the door shut again. Shane helped Davis shrug out of his outer layer while I moved toward the stove, pouring water into a tin cup without being asked. For a moment, none of us said anything. Then Shane broke it. "How is it?" Davis didn't answer right away. He took the cup from me and wrapped both hands around it before speaking. "It's holding," he said carefully. "Meaning," Shane pressed. "Meaning people are adapting," Davis replied. "Same as everywhere else." That wasn't what Shane meant. And Davis knew it. "She's still there," he said finally. My chest eased slightly. "But there's something new." Shane folded his arms. "What kind of something?" Davis stared into the steam rising from his cup for a moment before answering. "A few of them have been talking," he said. "Not the whole place, just a handful, about starting something." "What kind of something?" Shane repeated. Davis hesitated, like he didn't want to give the idea more weight than it deserved. "A brothel." The word landed, but not like a hammer. More like a stone dropped into still water. Shane's brow tightened. "Is that serious?" "Serious enough that they're discussing it," Davis replied. "It's not organized, not official, just people thinking about how to make things work long term. Trade, attraction, something different." He shifted slightly, jaw tightening. "A couple of the ones who changed, they've been part of the conversation, some of the stranger mutations too, people who figured they could turn it into something that brings others in." He finally looked up. "No one's forcing anything. It's not that." "Then what?" I asked quietly. He held my gaze. "She doesn't have family there," he said. "She doesn't have a built-in place. If things get tight, if food gets short, if trade slows down." He didn't finish. "She might think she doesn't have another option," I said. Davis nodded once. "I know she wouldn't do it lightly," he said, "and I know she's strong. She's handled herself better than most." His voice softened slightly. "But being strong doesn't mean you won't make choices just to survive." The cabin went quiet around that. Lucky Break wasn't rotting. It wasn't dangerous. It was adapting. Just like everywhere else. And sometimes adaptation meant people carving out spaces in ways they never would have before. "I don't want her thinking she's alone there," Davis said finally. "Not angry, not dramatic, just honest." We didn't decide anything that night. Not formally. The conversation about Michelle lingered in the air long after the stove burned low. Davis didn't push. Shane didn't argue. I could feel the direction we were drifting in, but no one named it yet. The next morning, Davis asked us to come into his room. That alone was unusual. Shane glanced at me briefly before following him inside. Davis didn't explain right away. He moved the small rug near the foot of his bed instead, folding it back to reveal bare wooden floorboards. I frowned. "What are you—" He dropped to one knee and ran his fingers along a seam I'd never noticed before. Then he pulled. The section of floor lifted like a hatch. Cool air rose up from below. Shane stepped forward immediately. "You're kidding!" "I didn't want to show it too soon," Davis said quietly. There was a narrow set of wooden steps leading down into darkness. "You've known about this the whole time?" Shane asked. Davis nodded once. "My uncle built it, or started it. He was prepared." We descended carefully. The space below wasn't massive, but it was deliberate. Shelving lined the walls, crates stacked neatly, everything organized with a kind of obsessive care. There was food, not mountains of it. A few cases of canned beans and soup, some jarred vegetables. Enough maybe to stretch a few weeks if rationed carefully, a month if things got desperate. Not a lifetime. Not even close. "This isn't lucky break," Davis said. "It wouldn't carry us." Shane turned slowly, taking it in. "Then why didn't you tell us?" The question wasn't angry, just real. Davis rested a hand against one of the shelves. "Because I needed to know we could do this without it," he said. "If we'd leaned on it from the start, we might have burned through it thinking we were safe. I didn't want us depending on something that runs out." That landed differently. Not secrecy, testing, margin. "You wanted to see if we could survive," I said. He nodded once. "Yeah." We looked around again. The food wasn't the point. The far shelves held what his uncle had clearly focused on. Large sealed bags of salt, pepper, garlic powder, paprika, dried minced onions, even cinnamon. The smell of those things alone felt extravagant. There were tools too. Extra axes, hand saws, hammers, boxes of nails. Nothing electric that would truly function long term. A power drill still in its case sat on a shelf nearby, hopeful and useless without electricity. "He planned bigger than he finished," Shane muttered. "Yeah," Davis said. "He ran out of time." There were crates of empty glass jars with lids, supplies for preserving, for canning, for planning beyond the next snowfall. Lower shelves held decks of cards, a couple of board games still wrapped, and books. More books than I'd seen in one place since before everything froze. I ran my fingers along the spines. Tom Clancy? A lot of Tom Clancy. I let out a quiet breath. I forgot how heavy stories used to feel. Davis glanced over. He used to say reading one was like stepping into a world that couldn't possibly fall apart. I traced one of the titles with my thumb. Now it felt like stepping into a world that already had. And maybe never would again. Near the back was a small portable CD player still boxed. Headphones, a pair of tiny battery-powered speakers, a crate of batteries stacked carefully beside it, and a handful of CDs. Nothing miraculous. Just pieces of a life that assumed there would always be more days. "This isn't about convincing us," Shane said finally, looking at Davis. Davis hesitated. "It's not," he admitted. "I know where you both stand." He looked at me directly. "You were already leaning toward bringing her here." I didn't deny it. "We weren't going to say no," Shane added. Davis exhaled slowly. "I just didn't want it to feel like adding weight to something fragile," he said. "We've built something steady. I don't want to strain it." I looked around again. This wouldn't save us, but it would give us space. Meals that didn't taste the same every night. Fish properly preserved. A way to store more than we immediately needed. Small comforts that reminded us we weren't animals scraping by. It wasn't salvation. It was margin. And that felt honest. The decision didn't take long once it was spoken plainly. We would all go. Not immediately. A few days to prepare, to make sure weather held, to pack what we could spare without leaving ourselves exposed. The real question wasn't whether we should go, it was what we'd leave behind. "We can't just lock it up and disappear," Shane said, leaning over the table with a rough sketch of our trap lines between us. "If someone passes through and thinks it's empty..." He didn't finish the thought. Davis nodded. "Smoke in the chimney matters. Tracks matter. And animals," I added. "If something gets in..." That's when Kyle's name came up, which led quickly to William. He was old enough, capable, already used to moving between cabins, and if he stayed here, it would look lived in without raising questions. Kyle didn't hesitate when we walked over the next morning to ask. "He'll do it," he said. "Laurel won't love it, but she'll understand." William tried not to look too pleased with himself when the plan was explained. "I can handle it," he said quickly. "I know your routine." "We're not asking you to hunt," Shane warned. "Just keep the stove going. Check the closer lines if you're comfortable. Make it look like someone's here." William nodded seriously. "I will." Back at the cabin, I found myself doing small things I hadn't planned on. Tidying shelves, stacking wood a little neater, changing the sheets in Shane's room without saying why. He watched me for a moment before asking, "You expect an inspection?" "Maybe," I replied lightly. He didn't press. The truth was simpler. If Michelle walked into this place, I didn't want it to feel temporary. I wanted it to feel like somewhere you could stay. By the time everything was settled, the plan felt solid. William would move in the morning. We left. We would take the straight route. 3 days out, 3 days back. And this time, when we returned, we wouldn't be returning alone. He arrived with a small pack, trying to look more serious than he probably felt. Shane walked him through the stove again, the trap lines closest to the cabin, where we kept extra kindling. "Don't overthink it," Shane told him. "Just keep it looking lived in." William nodded like he was being handed command of something larger than it was. By afternoon, our packs were set near the door. We weren't leaving until first light. That night felt different. Not tense, just transitional. After dinner, while Shane and Davis went over the route one last time, I slipped into Shane's room. It still smelled faintly like him. I'd already changed the sheets earlier, but I ran my hands over them again anyway, smoothing nothing that needed smoothing. I straightened the blanket, adjusted the pillow. Michelle wouldn't be sharing a room with Davis. Not yet. This would be hers. Shane would sleep with me. That part had already shifted without discussion. I stepped back toward the doorway and leaned lightly against the frame. The room didn't look different, but it wasn't what it had been anymore. That didn't sting. It felt right. I tried to picture her walking in, setting down whatever small amount of things she owned, looking around, unsure if she belonged. I hoped she would. Outside, I could hear the low murmur of Shane and Davis's voices, steady and familiar. The cabin was warm, organized, alive. For a long moment, I just stood there, not thinking about danger, not thinking about what might go wrong, just thinking about space, about making room. I stood there a second longer, listening to the quiet of the room. It didn't feel crowded yet, but it was ready.
Sometimes the future is just making more room.
Still lost in the dream, aren't you? Don't worry, I've got plenty more where that came from. Sweet, sexy, transformative little dreams. All just a click away. And if you're craving the naughty versions, the ones too hot for YouTube, you know exactly where to find them. On my Patreon. I'll be waiting, gorgeous.